Welcome. Welcome to Vitamae. I am your host, Maybelline Pletchett. Today is June 28th, 2021. And let's continue. I wanted to make sure that I shared a story about my own life story. And let's continue. I wanted to make sure. Our topic today is about me sharing my experience of my father's passing on April 6th, 2021. Maybe it's still a bit early for me to share this experience, only about 2 months. I believe this is my way of trying to move forward. Many are still in shock that they have lost so many loved ones. Grieving is a personal experience typically kept to ourselves. But like anyone else knows, I like to share lessons because I don't want to have others be experiencing the same challenges I face, or at least hopefully some of the lessons that I learn will help you get through day by day, if not an hour by hour. I can tell you right now, it's not an easy. The way I'm going to break out this experience is through some questions to myself on how I went through each day. So I'll describe the experience, at least when my father passed. It was late in the evening when we found out that he passed. Um, we received a call from my brother specifically. He found out that my dad passed. My father was in the ER, and ironically, that same day in the morning, me and my husband were actually getting the vaccination for COVID, our first dose. So it was definitely a unforgettable moment. I wasn't too sure how I would deal with it. Thankfully, my husband was there to keep me company and make sure that I would make it through. My mother was in the hospital as well, in ER, and that's where they were at. Just like anyone, it's always a shock. It doesn't matter how much you anticipate or try to prepare or even plan for. The moment is not something that you can easily go through or even describe. So give yourself the time and opportunity to, I would say, realize what's going on with you in that moment. I didn't cry the first time. At least when I arrived, it felt like I was numb. Um, it wasn't something that I was ready to express right away. In general, even before in the past, when somebody died, I wasn't really one to respond right away. Things that I was asked is, you know, how do you want to handle the remains? That was some of the questions that the nurse at that time asked, right? So depending on where you go and when this happens, you will be asked certain questions, and they will um, hopefully be kind and be patient with you and give you the moment to deal with losing your loved one. It's not easy. Um, at that time, the staff was very kind, and they made sure that we were given space to take a moment to capture what we want to capture. I chose to just observe. Um, I was hopeful, or at least thankful, that my father was in peace, and that's all that mattered to me. That he was at a place that he just needed to be where he was at that time. So that's all I could think of at that moment. I took quite a bit. I I was actually Googling and searching to see what funeral home we were going to place my father, because that wasn't not necessarily planned. My parents had some instructions, but there were so many changes that happened. They moved recently from a different state and came over where we're at, right? So it was definitely a challenge. I was very thankful that at a minimum he was able to move closer to us to see the children for at least a little bit. He had many challenges that he was facing, and I was amazed how brave my father was to make it through, despite the challenges that he faced. Um, it was difficult, not something that you typically go through and want to share with others. It's not something you discuss, prior to the event or life change. Not something that you even share that often because you really don't know what to do or say, especially for the ones that are waiting for you or trying to help you or support you. Let's just say you just go with the flow as best as you can. After I found a funeral, and thankfully that funeral home actually answered, even though it was late at night. So depending on the funeral home, if you found one, they may answer after hours, and give you at least additional information. So you do need to give yourself time to decide if that's the right funeral home. Is that the right um, place to be, or staff that's going to support you? I was very blessed, I would say, that the funeral home that we found were very, very patient with us, very helpful. I could not thank the funeral director enough. She was just, you can almost say, an angel. She asked, how we were doing, gave us the options that we have available, the pricing, the things that we needed to think about. My sibling and I had to decide on whether he was going to be cremated or going to be buried, right? There was a lot of things. It was a bit overwhelming going through the choices because that was, again, not something that you plan for, or at least not in detail, right? So it was, at least at a minimum, I knew there was a funeral home to think about and make choices and see if you had, the right budget, depending on what was asked or at least decided and chosen by your loved one. So make sure that you have that conversation prior to your loved one passing. That's something that now moving forward, I would plan for. And that's one of the takeaways I will give as part of the list to consider. What should you do immediately as soon as your loved one passes? Notify your work of the bereavement time needed. Let them know that you're going through this and you will need your time. It depends on your organization, depends on you. Ask your human resources, ask questions on how long you can take it, and make sure that your peers are there to support you, and family members or friends. This will be the time that you should ask. There is no shame in asking for help. Nothing's perfect. You will make mistakes. I know we made plenty, even though we thought we were prepared. Give yourself some time to grieve and express yourself, emotions and all. It's not something that you can stop yourself from feeling. I believe that that is your honest truth, expressing your grief, whether you're frustrated, angry, worried, anxious. I would think you're going to have multiple phases of expressions and emotions that you're going to feel. It's hard. It's not easy. You can find ways to try to give you the lift and the positive support. Lean on your tribes, lean on people that have been there that you can trust. It's not easy. Hopefully the ones that are close to you, that care about you, are there, and they will respect your space. They will ask you to give whatever it is that you need as best as you can and articulate it as best as you can. They will try to anticipate. They will, depending on their experience, will be able to give you concrete help, whether it's to do groceries, to just, give yourself a break to do chores, for example, or just time away from something, or just to do help, right? Whether to even cook for you or even just answer calls or coordinate things. I'm blessed that I have a younger brother that was very organized and very supportive, very patient. And, we've been preparing in a way, right? Because my father was already elderly and we didn't know when it was going to happen. We knew he had challenges that we would need to prepare for and eventually make choices and tough decisions for. So I'm very thankful that my brother is around and still going through the journey with me. It's 2 months later and we still have things that are not complete. It definitely is something that you need to plan for even before. I wish that we were taught family grieving to begin with. There are so many things that you don't think about that you should plan for. Just like I said, give yourself time. Make sure you notify all your loved ones that you want to share this with, your friends and peers, and really anyone that that should know about the death. What did I do? I'm very much of a technologist to begin with. I like sharing stories with my podcast and stuck through that. I had real live streaming recordings on Facebook and YouTube, or really mostly Facebook using Restream. I invited my relatives to record and save it using Zoom. I created a Facebook group page for the family to post family pictures and to tell stories about my father. As you already know, we don't spend enough time to talk with each other or tell stories of the past or even reminisce about the family histories that we have. So I made time to ask questions about what they thought my father was to them. There were many interesting stories, and as I already knew, my father was always a social person to begin with. So many people did remember how much he loved dancing and being the story or being the show for others. It was a moment where they described him as the light, the storyteller. They had good laughs, and those are the great stories that you want to hear about your loved one, right? Particularly with my father. Um, I also had, a moment where I got to hear the impact of my father for other people, that he was a teacher, that he was a person that other people could ask questions. I did have a few relatives or cousins that looked up to my father as somebody that was a fatherly figure to them. So it was great to hear the positive impact my dad as he was living through his life. He always enjoyed teaching others. And like any side of the coin of the story, we don't know 100% what a person is and who they are. Everybody sees them in a different light. So it's always good to share and reminisce about those stories. There are many things that you don't know. We don't know anyone 100%. But at a minimum, you can recall the memories, good or bad, because we're not perfect. So ensure that you listen, you're patient with yourself as well. There's going to be mixed emotions of what you feel about your loved one, the things that you wish you knew about them, the moments and times that you wish you spent with them while they were still alive. And literally, time is short. I'm grateful that I was able to spend as long as amount I can with my father. Where still some have not even had that time. Some people only knew about their father as a figure or don't even know who they are. So I'm very thankful that most of at least my 44 years of my life, I was able to have a family that is still, supported and continued to be the same as best as we can, even during the challenges of us moving in different countries and facing many, many interesting moments in life and stories. I could spend more time on that, but I will spare you those stories. Most important thing is, how do you deal when you lose somebody that you love or you care about, whether they're your relatives or your acquaintances or friends, or really anyone that you might lose. So it's you that you need to take care of, right? You can't regret. You just don't have time to regret. There are many things that will come at you that you weren't prepared to do so. Now, here's another question that I wish I knew. I was prepared to know, or at least what I should do. Understand estate planning better. That's something that's commonly forgotten, meaning, do you know what to do with the instructions of, let's say, for example, the wills, your properties, if any accounts that they might have, any car that they may have, whether they lease or own it, what are the utility services, anything online, anything that they are connected to, services, accounts in general. debt that they may have, anything that's financial responsibility, pension for that matter, what life insurance is. Is it accidental? Is it a death type life insurance? Do you know where to find those documents? And do you know who the executor is or who's assigned to execute on the will of your loved one? It's not something we talk about, and we should. It definitely ask a lawyer, right? Somebody that is a professional that knows how to handle and support those circumstances you have. There is no one place to find it. I was Googling a lot. I was researching a lot. My brother was asking other people. I was asking other people as well to see what it is when you deal with somebody or when you lose someone. There's no easy answer. Just decide what's best for you. If you feel like you're in a tight bind and you feel like you're being judged, all I can recommend is trust your instincts. Do what's best for you. You're going to have a whole lot of advice, but you can only do so much, right? Be kind to yourself. As I cannot reiterate that enough. Grieving it is different for everyone. It takes time, takes a lot of healing. There's a lot of things. I've always been hyper. I've had many hobbies, so I had many outlets to grieving. I'm still going through it. I love music. I love art, but singing is the easiest. I actually have a Smule app that I sing karaoke, where I have some followers and I record it and sing different songs. I actually dedicated some of the songs and posted it on Facebook. Use your social media for it if you're comfortable. Share it, because you're not the only one that's going through a moment of grieving and losing someone. And because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, many of us are experiencing it even more and more often than we care for. So just do what you can, understand your situation, and just do what you can, an hour by hour, moment by moment. The other piece that I don't think is discussed often, I mentioned earlier, is the funeral arrangements. It's very tedious. Some things that I needed to make sure I understood was, one, which funeral home are you going to cremate? Are you going to bury? Are you going to have, arrangements, ceremonies, obituary to write? Who's going to write that? Ask for help from people. You can't do it all. It's just hard and too much to do by yourself. Know where the paperwork is. Where's the will? Where's the trust, if you have it? Living revocable trust, hopefully, if you have it, depending on your asset and how much you have. So understand the difference. A will is when when somebody passes. A trust is a combination of things. They're basically very clear directions, or very much as clear direction you can get on what to do with assets, especially your financial responsibilities. Decide if you have additional family members who can help you do different things. For example, announcing the death, who's going to call, who's going to text, who's going to share it on the obituary or in the funeral online site, or newspaper for that matter. Who's announcing that? This is obviously not free, so consider the cost. Make sure that you have the necessary support, the funds, right? It's not cheap, I could tell you right now. It's quite a few thousands, right? So depending on the package that you're going for, you will want to work with the funeral director as closely as possible. Make sure that's the person that you're comfortable speaking with, because remember, this is something that doesn't happen often. So work with the one that you're comfortable working with. What helped me and my brother especially during the days of grieving, and we're still grieving. It's still fresh. Right? Have families support you. Hopefully, they're understanding of the situation. They're there to help you. If you have siblings, tag team, help each other out, share the workload. If you can plan it out or share and split the items and tasks that you need to tackle, have it. We had a shared workbook in Google Drive, whatever shared document you want to use online or on paper. It's your choice. Just make sure you're splitting the task between each other if possible. I know that it's not always the easiest if you're not close with your relative, or especially your siblings or anyone for that matter. It really depends on your relationship, how close you are. If you're not, lean out and ask friends or people that are willing to help you. I have many tribes personally and at work. I've leaned on them, and thankfully they've all checked in on me in different ways, whether they checked on me daily via Messenger, via different collaboration tools out there. There's so many between Facebook, LinkedIn, you can say texting, calling, video, Zoom meeting. I'm running out. Discord is another for that matter. There are just so many different tools out there now for communicating online. It's not the same as face to face. Now, I think, thankfully, things are starting to open up more. You can see each other face to face, but it was a challenge to see each other, especially during COVID. Lean on those people and at work, especially. Be as honest as you can, comfortably as you can. It's not easy to share something personal. Just know that everyone is going through different levels of this, whether it's their immediate family, friends, relatives, acquaintances. Many are going through grieving in many different ways near you and around the world. So know that you're not alone. Host a Facebook and live streaming. I did this as part of memory collection. I know we have a very large family ourselves. My mom and my dad, at least 6 to 7 siblings, not to mention many first cousins, second cousins, you name it. We have a clan of different relatives, not only in the United States, but in Canada, in the Philippines, and in different places. So consider where your relatives and families are that want to be involved or be notified. Don't be afraid to share the story and see if they have anything they can share, whether it's pictures or at least identifying pictures. I ended up scanning a whole lot of pictures. I'm still going through a whole lot of them, and it was nice to see there was black and white pictures. I like those pictures more. It looks interesting, and at some point when I looked through it, it was almost like a guessing game. So I asked my relatives, as part of the getting to know the family tree, is to help identify who were in the pictures, what year it was. So it was interesting. There was some, you can say, bloopers in some, but some I wish I had known. For example, I had no idea that we even had a picture of my grandpa when he died. My father and my uncles were there, black and white, when they were still little. My grandpa was a police that was very famous where he lived at, that the street was named after his last name. So he was definitely a significant or important figure for many. So it was important to know your history, right? Whether you like it or not, it's definitely good to know about your family's history, to recall those that you never even knew existed. So it was good to also connect with my cousins. I also told them, don't wait till somebody passes before we connect. So that's another learned lesson that I found, was connecting with your relatives. Don't wait so long to say hello or to just connect and see who they are, especially if you have a whole lot of relatives. Try to meet them, whether online or face to face. Do that as best as you can. What are some challenges that I faced during the passing? One, being organized. That was very difficult because my parents, again, moved recently. They were also in the middle moving again. So there were packages that needed to be sorted out, the paperwork, finding the important paperworks, right? See if you know where to find those. Don't wait till somebody passes, whether it's their birth certificate, marriage information, properties that they might have, important documents that are, related to the real estate, etc., or estate planning. Make sure you have all the accounts access information. Thankfully, before my dad's passing, we had planned to potentially deal with this sooner than later. We had accounts shared, made sure that their social security access online was already set so that we could easily make sure that that was updated for my mom as a widow, right? Or whoever your widow is or grieving person, make sure that they get the benefits, the pension, medical services, the insurance. There's so much to consider. Any investments or Roth IRA or rollover accounts, whatever, right? So make sure that you're aware of those, especially the financial responsibilities, like I mentioned earlier. In our case, Make sure that you know the credit cards, what to do with those, what you're going to do. I would say access as much information you have and be prepared to document, especially digitally, because you never know where it's at, know where that resides, whether it's in a safekeeping somewhere. Digitize as much as possible and scan everything that you have. I'm still scanning through documents myself. I want to make sure that my own documents are scanned and known so that my own family, if I ever pass, knows where to find those important documents when they need it, especially property. We ended up running a credit report to make sure that we fulfilled our responsibilities to make sure that our parents' financial items to be tracked are sorted out. Don't be afraid to ask questions, for a lawyer. Another thing that we learned about is power of attorney. That's only effective if they're alive. So if you have a power of attorney or durable power of attorney, that can help with processing things, especially for your loved one. If you have that designated already, then it helps with ensuring that different transactions are completing. So I would recommend that you have that already, especially if they're elderly or you're a guardian. Understand what that means, what the responsibilities are, what are shared accounts. If you have it, it's actually easier if you have shared accounts, because then you know how to get all the payments done that you need to make payment, especially the funeral needs that you may have. Who are the executors? Make sure that you have beneficiaries set for your banks, your you can say retirement accounts, right? Anything like that. Understand why, because it's not quick. You have to go through a process depending on the financial organization. There are specific requirements and it takes time. They need you to sign different papers, show documentations and ID. So it's a lot. So make sure you think about that ahead. Not only do you worry about the accounts, but make sure that all the online type accounts like social media, for example, that you have access to that, you know how to recover it. Another challenge that we faced was, for example, the Apple iTunes account. If you have the wrong phone number for retrieving and resetting that account, you're basically locked. Make sure that all the phone numbers that need to be tracked for any account should be updated, especially for two-factor authentication. So it's very challenging, especially for the elderly, right? If you have your parents that you are taking care of and they're very technology challenged, really anyone for that matter, make sure all the phone numbers, the addresses are current, so that all the correspondence go to the right place. You can authenticate and support the accounts as necessary. Mailing addresses, right? Forwarding address, especially when they're moving, or when you're basically downgrading or reconciliating. Not even just that, furniture, for example, all the things inside a home. If they're no longer going to live in the house or a place that they're renting, be prepared to make time to pack things or figure out where items are going to go, whether it's going to get shipped, donated, sold, or if they're moving somewhere else, how to ship it, logistics. Those things need to be done. Our mom had to move, and we had to think about how to take care of logistics, what needed to be packed, how much it costs, all that. It's a lot of effort in a very short time. We had to do that within a month. And how to cancel even the services. How do you cancel the lease, for example? They were leasing an apartment. We had to figure out how to do that, how to return the keys, how to get the cleaners, get a packaging or moving service to help, right? Make sure that you have services like cleaning services. They do that like for move out. So don't be afraid to pay for those, or at least use the services necessary. You don't need to do all of it. Get all the important paperwork. Those are the main things. And anything that's memorabilia, things that you want to pass on to your family. Another thing that you have to think about, especially for when you're in the funeral process, the death certificate. That needs to be signed by whoever the last primary doctor is. It depends. You need to ask the funeral director what you need. In our case, we needed the last primary doctor for my dad to sign off on the death certificate and to also identify all the information that needed to be placed in there. We were recommended to get at least 10 copies of original copies for that. 5 had a cause of death and 5 didn't. There's details in there that you need to provide so that they can process it and give you the copies. It's not that expensive, so get as many copies as you need. Don't be surprised that you'll need to send copies of that to financial organizations or medical companies to let them know that your loved one is passed, and now they need to terminate accounts or whatnot. Make sure you know what is necessary. Follow what's recommended based on the location, state, wherever you reside. It's a lot. There is a checklist that they provide you. You can even research it, but do what you can. Wills and trust, living revocable trust. Please don't wait that long to figure that out. Make sure that you have that laid out. The best thing you could do for your loved one is make sure that's signed, submitted, and taken care of. Ask an expert, get a lawyer, and make sure you take care of that. Please don't wait that long. The other piece that you want to do, what should other people do if somebody wants to support them and be helpful? What I recommend is be respectful of their privacy and their space. Let the person that's grieving reach out to you when they're ready. And if you have enough trust and they trust you and they're willing to, to take your help or receive your help, check in on them. Even if they say they're fine, definitely not fine. It's okay to say you're not okay. Be honest as much as you can. You are vulnerable, unfortunately, at this moment. And sadly, people that are left behind may be vulnerable for others to take advantage in this moment of grief, right? So make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of. Do not force anyone that's grieving or in that state. Please don't say, well, at least that happened or this and that. There are different useful tools from the funeral homes and agencies that you can look at on what to say and not to say. Please do not pry if they don't want to share with you how somebody died. It's not something that you should be pushing a lot for anyone to say. Listen to the person that's grieving, let them share what they're ready to share, and please do not force them and make them feel guilty any more than they are. They're already going through a lot. Offer to do something simple. Grocery if you can. Pitch in for chores, to clean up. At that time, depending on the person, they might even be able to get up or even talk to anyone, or they seclude themselves. They need that time and space to grieve. And even when they are back to work or back to what seemingly looks like a normal moment for them, they're still going through grieving in different ways. Sometimes it feels like denial. I feel like I'm still in denial. I'm still trying to go through the process of, addressing all the remaining tasks. We're not done. We still have things estate-wise that we need to work through. It's definitely not easy. Everyone grieves differently. I can share that during the funeral itself, there were times where we did smile to take a picture. I don't think there's anything wrong with people expressing they want to express. I'm hoping that when I do pass, that people don't grieve too long. I want people to remember the good moments and have fun and remember the fun moments that we had, the laughs that we had, the stories, those cool stories. I want to be remembered for that. Hopefully I left a good enough impression to be an example to others and help somebody else make it through the day. That's all I can ask for. Check in on people. It's definitely a sweet moment when people ask how they are. Be empathetic of the situation. Be kind to each other. And most of all, be kind to yourself, especially if you're the one grieving. We are not prepared for this. We can say we are, but we're not. Share your stories, because sometimes those moments or challenges, the things you have to go through, it's not something we commonly discuss even on dinner or even with anyone. I'm not sure why we're too shy to share about this. We all are going to die eventually, right? I know we can't plan for it or be prepared, but we know we will. But I think that the more open we are about something like this, it gives people a little bit of ways to do a little bit better. Not perfect, but just a little bit better. And just for summary, takeaways. I could not repeat it enough. Give yourself time to grieve. I'm still grieving today. I'm grieving with other people. There are still bursts of crying at moments. Sometimes you just sit there and you just cry. And then sometimes you just don't. It's okay to not be okay. It will take some time and live 1 hour at a time, one moment at a time. Find any laughter you can get, find any joy you can get. Cry if you need to cry. And you might hear it in my voice now. It's a continuous process of learning and making mistakes, right? You're doing the best you can. Be kind to yourself. You will experience many emotions all at once, maybe a few at a time, maybe all convoluted, all mixed up. It's difficult. Ask for help. Do what is right for you. When ready, start focusing on the things that you need, your health, especially your mental health, your physical health. It takes time to express. If you have new interests or hobbies that you want to use as a way to express, whether to write a journal, painting, try something new, be with different people, do different activities, try not to live your life in regrets. So as you see in my message, live with no regrets. Try to have a good day as best as you can, or bad day. There are bad days. You are in the present moment. It isn't easy. It is okay to say you're not okay, that you are experiencing sorrow, that you're frustrated, maybe even angry, and yes, maybe even regrets. Those regrets will linger. It takes adjustment, it takes a whole lot of patience, a whole lot of love, and a whole lot of support. Just do what you can and take it one moment at a time. So that's my lesson. I hope that if you saw this and you're watching this, you learned a few things that may help you through this experience. It won't be the first, or at least the last for me. I don't think it will be. Sadly, there have been more people out there that are going through it, close friends, peers. Just be there for them and just hang in there. We will somehow make it through. If it takes you watching more movies, binging movies, and having some fun and just going out there to get fresh air, do it. Do what's right for you. Okay? So this is me signing off, and hopefully I'll see you on the next episode. I'll have this uploaded soon. Check me out at the LinkedIn, Vitamae. That's the alias. I'll also share the podcast. I have the Facebook page, which is Vitamae.podcast. So I'll share that as well. Thanks and have a good night.